Hi, my name is Jordan. I like to talk about books. Welcome to my channel. 2025 is halfway over and somehow the country is still standing. It's a goddamn miracle, though I probably shouldn't speak too soon. Anyway, I thought I would do a little mid-year check-in of what I've read so far this year. I'm not going to get into every single book I've read. I'll put up a little list of what that looks like. Instead, I'm going to get into some highlights and lowlights of the year, starting with Seven Days in June by Tia Williams. Romance is an interesting genre. On the one hand, I love romance. I grew up reading tropey fan fiction in which I invested years of my life into, the pain of waiting for an update. I'm also a defender of genre fiction. Generally, I feel like romance and horror get a bad rep, and I am always here to shut that shit down. I wonder what it is about the romance genre and its target audience that makes everyone so mean about it. I guess we'll never know. With that said, on the other hand, there are a lot of romance novels that are bad. So I've become extremely picky with the genre. I'm really hesitant to try any new authors. That's why, despite hearing incredible things about Tia Williams and 7 Days in June specifically, I put off reading it. I was scared that I would be the one person who actually hated the book, but I am happy to report that I in fact did like this book. In a year in which I read the latest release from my favorite romance author, Emily Henry, this is by far the best romance I've read all year. Okay, so what is this about? So Eva Mercy and Shane Hall spent 1 week madly in love together as teenagers, but were tragically separated due to mysterious reasons. Now, 20 years later, they meet again for the first time, and they spend a week together reconnecting in Brooklyn. But during that 20-year span, both of them became authors. Eva is a best-selling erotica author, and Shane is a literary fiction award-winning author, and they've been writing to each other through their books in that 20-year span. I was not expecting this book to be as funny as it was. I had heard that it delves into some heavy themes, and at my bookstore, this isn't even categorized under romance. It's with the general fiction books. Heavy themes are definitely there, but it's not some depressing love story full of trauma. It's delightfully funny and has excellent banter. In fact, the heavy and light is balanced really well throughout the entire book. The romance is, of course, brilliant. Eva and Shane have palpable chemistry, and that moment when they meet again 20 years later, the tension is so good. Eva and Shane also work really well as standalone characters. They both have inner worlds and relationships outside of the romance that make them feel developed and like real people. I didn't rate this 5 stars because of the ending. It was just kind of drawn out, but also had some random choices thrown in there that I didn't fully understand. So yeah, that is the only thing keeping this book from being perfect. Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. You may argue that I am late to Legendborn considering that the 3rd entry was released a few months ago, but honestly this book wasn't on my radar until the last year-ish. I had heard about it, but my interest in YA fantasy has kind of died. I blame the Shadow and Bone trilogy, which I still haven't finished that series either. But I'd recently seen raving review after raving review for Legendborn, and I decided to finally check it out. After the tragic loss of her mother, Bree Matthews enrolls in a residential program at UNC Chapel Hill. Her first night there, she witnesses a magical attack and subsequently discovers this secret society of mages and knights known as the Legendborn. This unlocks memories and a unique magic within Bree that makes her realize that her mother's death was not the tragic accident that it was made out to be, so she infiltrates the Legendborn as one of their initiates. So the magic system in this book is based off of King Arthur lore. The Legendborn are descendants of the knights. I don't know much about King Arthur. I did read Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, but that's about it. But what I do know is that basing a fantasy novel off of that lore is a genius idea because there are so many ways to explore that. When I was reading this book, I was actively aware of how much I was enjoying it, which I don't know if that makes any sense, but I would just like pause and think like, I'm having such a good time with this book right now. It reminded me of reading Harry Potter when I was a kid, a series I absolutely loved but have since soured on in the last few years due to obvious transphobic author reasons. Anyways, I realized that the feeling I had while reading Legendborn was nostalgia. I so wish that I had this series whenever I was younger. I would have been obsessed. So I haven't given any specific reasons on why I love this book, and honestly, like, vibes alone are kind of enough to justify it, but here's a quick list of things that I love. Rich world building, and not just the King Arthur stuff, which is great, but Bree's ancestry plays a crucial and emotional part in the book as well. Action-packed, there is always something going on in this book, and the action is well written and exciting. Characterization, Bree goes through a lot in this book, and I loved how I always understood her throughout it. I understood her motivations, her struggles, even her relationships with other characters like her father and her best friend. I was with her through it all. I also love the reveal of information throughout the book. There are some discoveries that are made quite late into the narrative, but it never felt like a cheap twist right at the end. It was always something that kept me engaged and had me reflecting on what I had read prior to that moment. So yeah, if you haven't already, you should definitely read Legendborn. I have Bloodmarked the sequel, which I'm excited to read. I've kind of put it off because I'm worried I won't like it as much as I like this one. But I have heard that the series is generally consistent, so I need to get on that soon. Next, I have a surprisingly controversial book, and that is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. So we have these two authors, June Hayward and Athena Liu. Despite being peers at Yale, Athena is a literary star, and June can't even get a paperback release. Thus, when she witnesses Athena's death in a freak accident, June decides to steal her just-finished manuscript about the undervalued work of Chinese laborers in World War I. The book is an absolute hit, and with its release and her success, June and her publishing team rebrand her as Juniper Song and give her a more ethnically ambiguous vibe. As a thriller, this book was a banger. I read it so fast, I wanted to see what would happen next. I was on the edge of my seat, completely stressed out for this bitch. Which is another thing. Basically every character in this book is unlikable, especially June. She's like the worst. Yet despite never rooting for her, I was still super invested in where her decisions took her and how she would get out of the mess that she'd made for herself. Her flaws never get in the way of my enjoyment of the book, which is a very hard balance to strike. I've heard some complaints about the lack of subtlety in this book, and I have some complicated feelings on that. I kind of get it, because everything is on the nose here. And I just finished Babel like literally a few days ago, and I kind of see some similar issues in terms of lack of subtlety there, and it kind of made me wonder, is this just a theme for Kuang's work? But I also feel strongly that the blatant in-your-face direction that Yellowface takes works well in its context. Not everything needs to be subtle or understated. It's okay to have a message and unabashedly convey it. I mean, the premise is a white girl stealing an Asian girl's work, passing it off as her own, and pretending to be Asian in the process. The book is called Yellowface. I think that's an inherently unsubtle title and premise. It reminds me of discourse around the substance, like, where's the nuance? And look, generally nuance is a good thing. I'll go on the record saying that. But I just don't see a version of that film where nuance makes it any better. In fact, I think it would kind of take away some of its charm. I feel similarly about Yellowface. Ultimately, I think the book achieves its goals, and it is wildly entertaining and pretty informative about the publishing industry in the process. However, I am clearly not an authority on this book, so take my opinions with a grain of salt. This is just how I interpreted the book as reading as a casual consumer. At the very least, R.F. Kuang is an incredible writer, and I've never had a bad experience with one of her books, so I, for one, cannot wait for Calabasas. Next up, I have a memoir, and that is Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson. Honestly, I don't know what I could say about this book that would do its justice. The easiest 5-star read of the year so far for me. Bryan Stevenson founded the Equal Justice Initiative, a legal practice dedicated to helping those most in need caught up in the trap of the sometimes misguided but predominantly cruel and prejudiced criminal justice system. The primary narrative of the memoir is the case of Walter McMillan, a man who was put on death row for a murder that he did not commit. And there's no gray area here. He did not commit this murder. Along with that case, the book is interspersed with stories of other people that Stevenson has helped throughout his career. Chapters are themed around specific issues within the justice system. For example, the lack of mental health, resources, help, even general awareness for prisoners, or the cruel incarceration of children. But the through line is an anti-death penalty stance. I was already anti-death penalty when I first picked up this book, but I imagine it would do a pretty good job of convincing someone who is pro-death penalty to kind of re-examine their position. Labels like prisoners and criminals strip those people of their humanity. And when you're confronted by someone who is a criminal or a prisoner, you're forced to reckon with their personhood. When you read their stories, you can't ignore their humanity. And then it's not so easy to excuse or encourage the horrible treatment within the prison industrial complex. That's the angle Stevenson takes his message. Like, if people were confronted with the reality of the death penalty, most would oppose it. It's an optimistic view for sure, but I think it's mostly correct. I don't know how you could read this book and not get emotional. I personally legit cried like 5 times while reading it, like 5 separate times. And that's very rare for me. I never cry at books or movies or whatever, but this book, man, this is a must read for anybody and everybody. Even if you feel like you're generally knowledgeable on the subject, I still think you would gain something from this, just from the various perspectives or the amazing account of Stevenson's career. I studied some of this stuff in college and I still felt like I gained a lot from reading this book. Before I move on to the bad, I do want to give a quick honorable mention. Huge shout out to my favorite guilty pleasure author, Ali Hazelwood. I've read 3 of her books this year. I have Bride, Check-In Mate, and Problematic Summer Romance. Look, are her books amazing works of fiction? No. But are they good? That's also debatable. But I am addicted to them, and nobody can stop me from reading them. My favorite of these 3 is probably Check-In Mate. What more could I want out of life than a chest-centered romance? Anyway, I wanted to give her a shout out because at this rate, Ali Hazelwood is going to be my most read author of the year, and I need to make peace with that. Now on to The Hawthorne Legacy by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the second installment of the Inheritance Games trilogy, and the premise of the series is that average high schooler Avery Grams receives the inheritance of billionaire Tobias Hawthorne with no clue as to why. So she must move into his mansion and solve this mystery through a series of puzzles and riddles accompanied by the 4 Hawthorne grandsons. The first book was okay. I didn't love it the way that everyone else seems to, but I did think it was fun. So I kind of knew going into this one that it probably wouldn't be my cup of tea. But this one, I swear, I blacked out while reading this. I don't remember anything. It was like I was reading the words on the page, but it was like no thoughts had empty. It just feels kind of unnecessary. This could have been an email, you know? The content does not justify a trilogy, in my opinion. My biggest gripe with this book is the love triangle. I do not care about that at all. There are so many scenes with this romantic tension that just fall so flat for me. Somehow, despite being drastically different characters with contrasting personalities, Jameson and Grayson both read like the same dude to me. They are blurred together in my mind. Maybe because they're both so boring. I don't know why. I do feel confident in saying that you could just cut the romance out of this book altogether and it would be better off for it. And I'm not even a love triangle hater. I liked what was going on in Legendborn, but it just feels so forced here. All that said, I'm still probably going to read the last book, just might as well see it through. A Certain Hunger by Chelsea G. Summers. I'm on a mission to read all the Weird Girl books. Think Boy Parts and My Year Rest and Relaxation. I've been influenced by TikTok. I see all of these cool girls with their stacks of weird and vaguely feminist books, and I think, ooh, I want to be cool and weird too, and then I go and buy those books. But despite the peer pressure to fit in, I have actually not been impressed by this niche TikTok genre, and thus I am now just trying to figure out what it is that I am missing, therefore a certain hunger. So we follow food critic Dorothy Daniels from her seemingly normal early childhood life to the moment that she stabs a guy in the neck with an ice pick. It's a journal entry kind of narrative, and two things you're going to want to know going in. One, Dorothy is obsessed with food. Two, Dorothy is obsessed with sex. Both of those are featured heavily throughout the book. I'm not going to say that this book is pointless or trying too hard to be deep, but I do struggle to find the meaning. Like, I could make up some bullshit answer about the themes and meaning in this book, but honestly, I just don't find it thought-provoking. There's stuff about feminism, classism, but there's nothing really tying the book together, and I had the same issue with My Year of Rest and Relaxation. I think the book is trying to do too much that none of it ends up working. I very well could be missing the point. After all, this is an extremely subjective take, so I welcome some lively yet respectable debate about this. Although, can I also mention that all the food stuff was so esoteric and pretentious? And I know that was the point, but it still wasn't fun to read, especially for me, a certified picky eater. I didn't know what the hell she was talking about. How to Be Eaten by Maria Adelmann. Probably my biggest disappointment of the year so far because unlike the previous two books, I was actually looking forward to this one. A super intriguing premise that really pulled me in that was just unfortunately wasted. So it's present day New York and 5 women meet in a basement support group to process their traumas. The hook is that each woman is based off of a fairy tale character. So there's Little Red Riding Hood and Gretel of Hansel and Gretel fame, etc. The book is in 5 parts where each girl tells her story, and of course there's banter and bickering amongst the girls throughout those parts. The concept is so fun and quirky and has so much potential, but unfortunately it just somehow does not land. After each girl finished telling her story, I was just left wondering what the point was. I never felt like I gained anything new or learned anything about the characters. Plus, the tales themselves weren't even innovative or deep or even particularly entertaining. The dynamic between the 5 girls is almost random. I don't see any growth or change. Whether or not they get along is seemingly up to chance. And the ending truly lost me. It was trying really hard to be funny and quirky, but at that point I was so uninvested that trying to throw in I guess a twist just really did not work for me. I was just ready for the book to be over. I didn't loathe this book. I did give it 3 stars, but I think that was me being too nice. It's probably more like a 2. But it is a debut, and I think that Adelmann does have potential as a writer. I can envision a book in which her offbeat tone and humor really work, but unfortunately for this one, I had specific expectations that made it a disappointment. That's it. That is my mid-year review. Honestly, the highs were pretty high and the lows weren't too low. I'm not mad about that. Let me know if you agree/disagree with any of my picks. Also, what are your favorite reads of the year so far? Leave a like if you liked the video, subscribe if you're feeling nice, and I'll see you in the next one.